I think one of the real eye-catching features of our book is that we were able to have it done in color and color cartoons, and so it's motivating to students, I think, in that way. You don't want something that looks like a dull, boring black and white textbook. You want something that looks a little more exciting than that. And so the textbook as it is has color cartoons, and we have grammar beginning from one end of it and the reader from the other, which I think is really a great sort of design, so that you really feel like it's all there in one package for you.
There's a real efficiency in using it that way, that you start from both ends. I think there's also a psychological element that in the one end, starting with the textbook and the grammar, you have the 50 lessons that are in some ways a little more traditional in the sense that you have grammar lessons and you have exercises, although there are also production exercises there. You flip to the other end and you're entering the Hebrew world, where you have the illustrations, you have the Hebrew text, and you're moving from right to left, not just in writing, but also in the textbook itself.
Yeah, and so the way we've designed it is not only having the lessons in the reader, but the lessons themselves have very pointed exercises that are intended to then give the student a chance to grapple with that specific grammatical point in a very discrete and pointed way. And then we've got a number of exercises with the readings as well that get the students to, within the context of the biblical text they're working with, get to work with the Hebrew language themselves in a variety of ways, in discourse with their fellow students, even down to drawing pictures to describe the Hebrew that they're reading, the Hebrew captions.
There's also an important element to the reader in the sense that while the textbook lessons are structured 1 to 50 and move progressively through different items, the textbook uses a cyclical approach, building on the concept that repetition is very important for language learning, so that we picked 3 passages for the first 10 readings. And the students work through Genesis 3, Genesis 22, and Genesis 37 3 times, and the Hebrew gets progressively more difficult. And so they learn these passages very well. They learn new concepts each time they go through them. And what we've done is then they have the obstacle of the new items they've learned, but we've removed the obstacle of always facing a new text and a completely new set of vocabulary.
And I think one of the components of our philological realism, combined with trying to use second language acquisition and repetition, has resulted in really a nice balance whereby they go through these 3 texts, Genesis 3, Genesis 22, and 37, 3 times, and the third time it is straight biblical Hebrew. And these students, therefore, within this short amount of time, are dealing with the Hebrew text itself. And so rather than having to decide between do we create Hebrew passages for them to translate, or do we throw them directly into the text, we've made a means by which gradually they can come to recognize the Hebrew text and understand it and read it with comprehension.
There's also an important element here that since some students coming into biblical Hebrew class know these biblical texts so well, a lot of the exercises are made to include a bit of humor, but also are detached from what's going on in the text. So they use the vocabulary, but they change it around. So one of the sets of exercises in the reading is that the students have to draw these little scenes, but the scenes are quite often nonsense scenes. So instead of Abraham saddling the donkey, it's the donkey saddling Isaac or something like that. And the students have to be able to process the Hebrew. So throughout our focus in the exercises and in the way that the biblical text is rewritten within this progressively more difficult and closer to biblical style of language, is the students are forced to grapple with, do they comprehend the language that they're learning, and then can they produce it on their own? So it's not about, our textbook isn't about learning Hebrew to translate. Our textbook is fundamentally about learning Hebrew to understand the language, to comprehend it.